Hello, everybody. So you might have seen me here earlier today. This is my second presentation of the day. So the first one was on network automation, and it was some high-level heavy stuff. So this one is a bit more lighthearted, I hope. And it's a topic that you can actually implement in your network without having to first think of architecture and other stuff. And hopefully it also brings you immediate benefits rather than planning for long term. And we will also talk about some basic things about good practices for access management and stuff like that. So yes, this one is about unify user management with Radius, or how to not suck at access management. So again, about me, in case you missed me the first time, my name is Thomas. I'm a system architect, MikroTik certified trainer, and consultant. I'm here with Unimus, which is a network backup and management solution. We have a stand down there. If you feel like it, come and visit us, talk to us, see what we do. So it's after lunch, so let's do a little exercise. So why are we talking about any of this? And let's make a little I guess inquiry as to how many of you do your access management correctly already. So do you have a single password for your network devices that you share with other admins in your organization? Come on, put your hands up if you do this. We won't judge. Don't worry, we won't judge. Okay, come on, people, come on. So yes, there are a few people there, a few people there. Okay, not that much. Good. Okay, good. But for those of you that already do this, then this presentation is for you. Okay, so the next step. Level 2. Do you have a few common passwords that you use for your network devices that you share with your other network admins? So not just one password, but a few passwords that you repeat and mix them here and there in your network, and you share them around in your organization. Come on, put your hands up if you do this. Okay, there's more people than before. Okay, so at least you weren't level 1 bad, you are just level 2 bad. Sorry about that. Okay, next level, level 3. Do you have a per device unique password and then share that using a spreadsheet or a password manager? Does anybody do that? Okay, there's 1, 2, 3, okay, a few. You guys put your hands up for everything? Okay. Oh, okay, different devices, different methods. Okay. So the answer to all of this should be no. So if you put up your hands for any of these points, then again, this presentation is for you, and hopefully it can help you to, well, as I said, not suck at network access management. And as I said, we won't judge. This is not anything against you. I'm just trying to tell you what you shouldn't do and what you should do. Okay, so problem 1. Let's talk about these problems in details, and let's go a bit into basics. Hopefully everybody understands this, but it's important enough to actually repeat and to go over again. So do you have a single password for your networking devices that you share with other admins in your organization? So this is the worst case scenario, and you should never do this. I understand that if you are currently doing it, that it's probably evolved from when your network was small and you slowly grew and you just didn't have time to deal with it, or there are other, again, what I would call excuses. It's valid reasons, I understand, but you should have already fixed it. So that's why we are talking about it here, how to fix it. So why is this bad? Why is this even a problem? Because this exposes you to massive risk and puts your entire network under a huge attack vector. I hope everybody can understand why. If this one password that you use for securing the management point to all of your devices is somehow leaked, then your entire network becomes vulnerable to attack, to reconfiguration. It's an enormous attack vector. So how can this happen? There are millions of ways. Phishing attacks, keyloggers, viruses, very, very common ways. Telling the password to people over the phone or yelling it across the room. Or actually transmitting it in any non-secure way, like email, instant messaging, etc. If you do this, then it's just a bad idea and you shouldn't do it. And actually, what a lot of people don't think about is if you sell any of your old Office PCs to eBay, to your customers, whatever, you get rid of your old Office PC, you forget those passwords are remembered in there, because of course they are, and your password has been leaked. And this is, as I said, an enormous attack vector. Okay, it might be a not very feasible scenario that doesn't happen in the wild often. But if somebody wanted to attack your network specifically, it's really easy to target some of your old equipment or just, steal a hard drive, whatever. It's a huge attack vector again. So yeah, or even what has actually happened to a friend of mine, one of their techs put his personal laptop into a repair shop. He had their network access credentials remembered inside of that laptop, and what happened is that this repair shop, which he for some reason put his personal laptop into, and again for some reason their network password was in that personal laptop, the company which did service on that laptop actually put the image of this of his laptop for sale on the black market, you could say. There are actually sites like this where you can buy images of just random laptops on the internet. And so that's what happened to them. They put it up, somebody bought those images, or it's actually a fairly common occurrence that hackers purchase those images. It's random images, but they use them for data mining. And somebody actually extracted their SSH, IP address, port, and credentials, logged into their SIP server, and maybe a bit of explanation. What is SIP? SIP is online telephony, right? It's voice phone calls, basically. So somebody extracted that password, used it to log into their main SIP server, and actually opened SIP to some very nasty phone calls, which resulted in about 3,000 euros of lost revenue per hour. They stopped it after 6 hours because they didn't notice before. But you can imagine how this would upset pretty much anybody if this happened to you. So, and this is actually a real story, as I said. Even this is a attack vector. This is why you shouldn't do this. And these are just examples. There is many more ways how that password can get leaked, and many more ways how it can be exploited. And I would think I am talking about a obvious thing here, that how can this be exploited and why this is a big attack vector. But those of you that put your hands up, don't think you're alone in this. I think there's more people here that didn't put their hands up, and we know there is many people even outside of this conference in the world still doing this. So this is why we are having this talk. So yes, any of these can expose your password, and that opens the access to your entire management of the network to anybody. So that's why you shouldn't do this, and that's why it's a problem. So problem 2, do you have a few common passwords that you use across your networking devices that you share with your people in the network? Otherwise known as, have you tried all the 4 passwords to get access into this device? I think everybody knows what I'm talking about, right? Password 1, nope, doesn't work. Password 2, nope, doesn't work. Password 3, nope, doesn't work. So yes, it's almost as bad as number 1. It's a little bit better, but still bad. And with the addition that you never know which of your passwords is going to work for which of your devices, right? So yes, you have to actually supply all 4 of your valid credentials. At the worst case, of course, maybe you actually hit the right one for the first time. But you can imagine how this is still a bad thing. And as a bonus, you and your coworkers need to share and remember multiple passwords. Not good either. So problem 3. Do you have a per device unique password and then share that using a spreadsheet or a password manager? Better. Better. I congratulate you. This is better. But it's still not optimal. Why? Because you still need to share passwords, and multiple people use the same credentials to access a single device. Yes, every single device has different credentials, but still, it's not the correct way. Because you have to take care of password distribution, tracking of password change. Let's say you have a network of 2,000 devices. That means you have 2,000 unique passwords. You need to somehow track changes of, redistribute the device password changes, blah, 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 blah. And again, it's a huge potential for leak, because there's a lot of passwords that need to be somehow stored securely, and let's be honest, none of us are that good with security. So again, it's better, but it's still not the optimal way. So this still can become an issue. So yes, and the biggest problem of it is that when you have a single account that multiple people use to access your devices, no matter if it's a per device unique account, as long as it's a single account that multiple people use, you lose the ability to know who made the change to a device. And this is very important, because you have no way to know, admin changed this, admin changed that, admin changed 20 things. So who is admin? Is it one of your employees? Is it a hacked account? Was there a security leak? You know, what's going on? You lose any kind of change auditing possibility, change tracking possibility. You just lose a lot from the management standpoint. And again, since we are trying to be better networking people, we are trying to better ourselves, change auditing and actually configuration auditing and change management and proper change processes are very, very important concepts that I feel are underappreciated in our industry and underused in our industry. So yes, and in bigger networks and in more professional or secure networks, when you don't have this, you are not in a good place. Why? Because in such bigger and more complex or more secure networks, you usually have some kind of compliance that you need to comply to. And compliance without auditing and without being able to tell who does what and when is very, very difficult. You are simply not going to pass stricter compliances with that when you have one administrative account that everybody uses and shares and does different things with. So there is many reasons why this is bad. Okay, so that was my speech number one. Now let's ask some different questions. So first of all, put your hands up if, level 1, when you need to change a password on all of your devices, it will take only a few single steps. Who already has this ability? Okay, I see 3, 4 hands up. Okay, so this is level 1. This is the easiest thing that you should have. So again, imagine that for whatever reason, compliance changed. You need to enforce stricter passwords. You need to enforce password expiry and things like that, which are common in higher compliance, higher security environments. It is absolutely essential to be able to change a password on all of your devices that you have in your network or change access credentials with just a few clicks. Again, imagine today, earlier I talked about automation, right? And automating a network with 1,500 routers, MikroTiks. So imagine if we needed to change our password on 1,500 devices manually. And even with automation, you know, it's not proper way to just have to push a new configuration revision out simply to influence access management. Access management should be completely separated, abstracted from configuration management, because access management and configuration management are two entirely different things. And this can be done, and in a few slides we will actually talk about how you can do this, and etc. So again, by separating access management from configuration management, we will achieve that only with a few simple steps, few simple clicks, we will actually change our password on our entire network. Okay, so level 1. So level 2, raise your hands if you have unique accounts for each of your administrators. Okay, more people than number 1. Good, okay, good. So you didn't pass level 1, but you passed level 2. So hopefully, after my previous talk on this slide, I don't have to talk anymore about why this is important. That each of your administrators needs to have his own separate account that he's not sharing with anybody. Again, it's because of change auditing. Again, it's because you need to know who does what and when. And this is not to punish people. This is not to log into a router and, you did a bad thing at this time. No, this is not for that. It's again, just imagine how faster and simpler it is when you log into a router, you see something that you do not understand in the configuration. And in configuration of really complex routers, it's very common to I'm sure it happened to you as well. You stare for 5 minutes at the firewall, try to figure out why is this rule there, what's happening. And in things like Mangle, I don't know how many of you deal with Mangle, but for example, when you have a 4-WAN, 4-uplink router that has policy-based routing and inbound connection mangling and bandwidth-based load balancing, for example, that Mangle can get very complex really fast. So again, it's a huge benefit when you see, okay, admin, I don't know, John changed a rule yesterday. Okay, why? So I just pick up a phone and talk to John, and he'll tell me why did he do it, instead of me having to understand what's happening there because I only see admin change the rule. Well, who's admin? So again, I think I'm explaining an obvious thing, but I feel it still needs to be stated. So back to our raising of hands. So level 3, When you need to change a password because it has been compromised, or for example, because password expiry policy dictates you need to change your password, we would only take a few simple steps. Who can do this in your network? 1, 2, 3, 4? 4 people. Okay, so again, I hope I don't have to explain why this is important. So of course, when a password is compromised, you really need to be able to react to that as fast as possible. You need to remove the ability to use that password from your entire network as fast as possible, because it minimizes your impact of attack, the impact of the breach, right? And okay, the last level, when a new admin is hired, can you create a new unique user account for him that works consistently across the whole network in a few easy steps? Who can do this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? Okay. Okay, good job. Okay, so I actually have a bonus level, which is not here on the slide. So a little bonus level. How many of you have a network-wide defined authorization policy? What this means is I have an admin which has limited privileges, and I can, with a single click, give him limited privileges on one group of routers and full admin privileges on a second group of routers. Who can do this in a few clicks? 1, 2, almost, okay. You are good. You raised your hand to almost everything. You are good. Yes, that was to you. Good job. So again, why is this important? Because if you are in a bigger organization and a bigger network, you have multiple network admins which are probably responsible for multiple things, right? One admin is responsible for region A, second admin is responsible for region B, or one admin is responsible for VPN access concentrators, and the other admin is responsible for brasses, etc. You understand, it's a grouping of workflow, and certain admins take care of certain things. So it makes sense from a single point with a few clicks to be able to actually separate different access policies for different administrators. I hope everybody understands what I mean by this. If not, just raise your hands. Are we clear? Can we go on? Okay, it seems everybody's okay. So all of this, your answer to all of these questions should have been yes, and we had one person who had answers to all of this yes. Good job, as I said previously. Almost the second person, yes, almost. So yes, so this is what I mean by, we still need to do presentations like this because, we all need to learn how to not suck at access management. It's an important topic. And again, I'm not trying to blame anybody. I'm not judging anybody, but hopefully this will help you to achieve all of these nice things. All right. So what do we want to achieve? As we said, the answer to all the previous questions should have been yes. And so if you can do all the things on the previous page, or if after this presentation you will know how to do all of these things, it will allow you to, first of all, quickly react to credential breaches and or leaks. So when you have a credential leak, it's your absolute priority to fix it as soon as possible to minimize the damage. So again, all of the previous questions and steps aim at this. So if you have a breach, you can quickly react to it, and it can quickly be put to rest. Another nice benefit that you will have is you will have per admin unique credentials for device access accounting. And I already talked about this, right? It's important to know who did what and when, who logged to which device and when. And again, when you are in a stricter security environment with compliance rules and policies, this will be absolutely essential to be able to know who logged in and when, and who logged out and when, and etc. It's security things. You have to have that. That's proper security. So another thing that we will be able to do is quickly change a password for a single account across your whole network. Great. Quickly create new network-wide unique accounts for new employees. Again, great. According to what we just said in the previous slides, this is what we want. And quickly remove no longer necessary access to the network. So when an employee leaves or when you only granted access to your administrative interfaces to an external consultant for only a certain amount of time, you will be simply with a few clicks able to remove that access from your entire network. And again, it will also give us that segmentation, granular, network-wide, consistent segmentation and management of access. As we said, John has full administrative access to VPN access concentrators, read-only access to BGP peers, and no access to, I don't know, to customer routers, for example, right? So again, we will be able to achieve that, or you hopefully will know how to achieve that after this presentation. Okay, any questions? All right, so we continue. Okay, I think we already talked about this. Yes, we already talked about all of this on the previous slides. Okay, so what should you be aiming for? As we stated multiple times, per admin accounts, a single authentication point, a single does not mean one, it means single, but still redundant, that all devices in your network will use to authenticate logins into those devices. So how we will achieve all of this is we have one authentication point, all of our devices point to this authentication point and authenticate their users against that authentication point, which is redundant. That's how we achieve all of this. So basically, then we have a single interface, which is usually a web management interface, where we create accounts, change the passwords to accounts, delete accounts, assign access policies, etc. So, and then what should we be aiming for as the last is we should have full accounting. So full accountability of who logged in when and who logged out of where when. I hope that makes sense to everybody. Any questions? Okay. So, next level. So after you have all of this, you are in a good position. If you want to be in a great and secure position, this is the next level. We enforce password policies, complexity and expiry. I hope I don't have to say that passwords like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 are not good passwords, or passwords like QWERTY or give me access or admin, those are not good access credentials. Everybody understands that. So it's a very good idea to enforce password policies. First of all, complexity, and second of all, expiry. So the next objective for our next level security should be unified but flexible access policy, which is what we talked about previously. Because authentication is not equal to authorization. So I feel I need to explain this sentence because usually people don't understand this sentence. So what is authentication, right? And this is going back to beginnings a little bit. Authentication means that a username and password pair or a credential pair, because it can also be username and certificate or username and my SSH key or something similar. Let's just call it credentials. So authentication just means that my credentials are valid. But if my credentials are valid, it does not automatically mean that I have access to a device. So again, what we do is we split authentication from authorization. When we do that, we are able to do the nice thing which I mentioned previously, that John, with one single set of credentials, which is authorized centrally, his authorization policy states that to VPN access concentrators, he has full access, to BGP peers, he has read-only access, to customer routers, he has no access. So again, John authenticates to a central point successfully, but then there is also authorization policy which dictates if the device into which John has authenticated, if he has authorization to log into that device. Hopefully I didn't jumble that up too badly and hopefully everybody understands. So this is what I mean by unified but flexible access policy. We split authentication from authorization, and we can assign authorization separately from authentication. And the last level, the best level, is that long and complex passwords stored in a password manager are the best thing you can have. So this is a good password. Of course, you will not ever remember that, and that's the point. You have a password manager for that. But again, this is different from having passwords in password manager that we share with others. We should never share. We should never have one account. We should never have one account which multiple people use. There should never be sharing. I am me, just me. I am identified by my credentials, nobody else. The fact that my credentials are, or if my credentials are good, that's another debate. So that's why we are saying, passwords like this are good passwords. Things like SSH keys or certificates are even better, etc. So yes. Any questions after this section? Or am I just putting everybody to sleep yet? Oh, a few people actually. Okay. All right, let's continue then. So how do we achieve all of this? AAA to the rescue. So what is AAA? What am I talking about here? So a proper AAA implementation will actually do all of these nice things for us. So AAA stands for authentication, authorization, and accounting. So we already explained what authentication is, we already explained what authorization is, and we've touched on accounting. As I've mentioned before, the fact that you collect when somebody has logged in and into which device, and when somebody has logged out and from which device, that is accounting. So the most used AAA standard today is Radius. There is also TechX Plus, but let's be honest, nobody uses that or wants to use that. So Radius is the standard that everybody, the whole industry uses today to achieve this. Unless you do it in a different way, because there are proprietary standards and other things, but we are talking about the standards-based, open to all your devices, AAA system that you can use. So, basically, what our ultimate dream is here to create an SSO, single sign-on system. This means that you have a single set of credentials that give you, but only you have it, nobody else. Every admin has their own. You have a single set of credentials that works consistently across your entire network. This means from your routers, through your switches, through your servers, through your account into your computer, through your VPN, username, password, single sign-on. And again, there is an argument that this actually increases attack surface because every single of your passwords is the same, which is a valid argument. But if we have properly implemented AAA, if there is a breach, we will know about the breach because of accounting. And if there is a breach, we can, with just 2 or 3 clicks, change the password consistently everywhere. So, it's a plus/minus thing, because if you have multiple different access credentials to multiple different things, yes, one can get breached, but it's harder to detect that just one got breached. And if you have multiple of them, it's harder to manage them consistently across your entire network. So I personally prefer what you could call true SSO systems, which means that you literally just have one username password that you use consistently across all your entire infrastructure, across all of your services. The password, when it's something like this, it's not pretty much impossible or not feasible to crack it. Of course, you can get catched by a phishing attack or something similar, but we could talk and philosophize about this for years. And security experts have been doing this. There is pros and cons to all of this that I'm talking about. It's a difficult security debate. What's better? I'm simply trying to recommend what I think is the right way. And the industry doesn't go against me. As I said, there are other competing ways to do this, but there is no clear winner. And I personally think this is much better, to have one consistent set of credentials you use everywhere, and that's it. If you need to change it, it's a couple of clicks. And again, you get around the problem of, oh, I tried password 1, oh, I tried password 2, oh, I tried password 3, etc. So for example, for us, in our topology, in our infrastructure, I literally have one username password that I use for my VPN, remote desktop, our cloud solution, our routers, our switches, our Linux servers, everything. It's a true SSO system. And again, this is all backed by Radius. So what I'm trying to tell you is that, of course, we won't be talking about a complex SSO implementation here because it's out of scope and we don't have time for that. But what I'm trying to tell you is that if you start, even with your networking, you can later on expand it properly into the rest of the network. It's possible. If you implement what I'm trying to show you here, it will not slow you down in the future. Anyway, I feel like I've gone on a bit of a tangent, so let's continue with the presentation. So yes, AAA and Radius will allow us to do all of the things that we've just talked about. So how does Radius work? You have a user which knows his credentials, and then you have a device. In our case, it would be a MikroTik. And in the Radius nomenclature, it's called the Radius client. So a user is not a Radius client, right? Because usually when you say client, you mean the user, not in the Radius nomenclature. In the Radius nomenclature, user, client. Then you have your network, so IP connectivity. And somewhere in your network, you have a Radius server, or what is in the Radius nomenclature called a NAS, Network Access Server. And then behind that, you have a database. So of course, this should be redundant, and this should be redundant. And then you have devices all across your network. And yeah, Radius is not that hard in concept, but it chooses its friends. So it can be hard and complex if it decides that you are not its friend. So yes, basically it's as simple as pointing all your MikroTiks to do their AAA, their user logins from the Radius servers and not from their local user databases. In principle, it's that simple. Does everybody understand? Yes, question?
Is it possible to fall back this AAA network if the network fails and cannot reach the
Yes. So the question was, is it possible to fall back into the local user database when there is a network outage on something else? Yes, it's entirely possible. And actually, in a few slides, we will talk about it. So yes. Any more questions? Anybody? Okay. Yes.
It is possible to per device account.
Uh,
Not one admin only log into one MikroTik device.
Oh yes, it's possible, and this is what we mentioned by authorization. So yes, I can separate the authorization, and my authorization policy states that this admin can only get to one MikroTik. Yes, it's possible. Okay.
Have you come across a system that uses one-time password in, with Radius itself, so the user's database isn't storing some static passwords or?
Yes. So this the question was: is it possible, or have I come across a system where you have a one-time password to access the device? It's possible. I haven't implemented a system like that, but it's possible. And all it requires is proper manipulation of the Radius and the database behind the Radius itself. So what you would do is you would actually count how many times a certain credentials have been used on the Radius. And the first time the Radius would reply, yes, this user can log in. But the second time the Radius would reply, no, this user cannot log in. So it's possible, but I haven't done an implementation like that. But it's possible. Any more questions? Okay, should we continue? I guess so. So yes, in principle, it's not that hard. When you put it down to its bare basics, it really is not that hard. So let's go into a bit more into specifics. So what happens at user login and user logout? So as we said, our objective is to point all our MikroTiks to do their AAA against our Radius servers, RADE servers. So when a user tries to log in against a Radius client, in this case our MikroTik, MikroTik basically authenticates the user against the Radius NAS, Network Access Server. So user supplies his credentials to the MikroTik, and MikroTik asks our Radius server, are these credentials valid? So this is the first A. This is authentication. Then, depending on if the credentials are valid or not, our NAS, our network access server, our radius, replies with either access accept or access denied. So again, this is what we mean by having a single point inside of our network where all the logins are authenticated against. Then we will pause at the authorization for a second. We will cover that in a few slides. The next thing we are going to talk about is accounting. So the next step that our MikroTik does, if access is accepted, so if user is granted access, MikroTik simply sends a accounting start packet to the radius server. So logins and logouts are accounted against the radius server. And there can also be periodic updates, which means that in simple terms, user puts in his username and password, MikroTik asks the radius server says, yes, he can log in, and MikroTik says, okay, this user has started a session. So you know, okay, this admin has logged in at this and this time. And when the admin logs out, MikroTik simply sends a accounting stop request and radius replies, and therefore, again, the single point inside of our network knows consistently about all logins and logouts. Any questions for this? Okay. And yes, this is a simplified diagram. It's not as simple as this because there is more communication between these things. And as we said, there can be periodic accounting updates. So this is a simplified diagram, but it's good enough for our purposes. This is how it really works. There is just a bit more stuff in there. So yes, a little complication. And so we talked about authentication when we talked about accounting. So a little complication or authorization. So as part of the access accept packet, attributes are sent to the radius client. So when the radius actually tells our router that yes, this user can log in, it can send some attributes. It can send some custom data to the MikroTik that can tell MikroTik to do some additional things. And these attributes can be many different things. Some are even vendor specific, etc. So we can use this for authorization. So what can we do? If the NAS, let's say this is John again, and this is a VPN access concentrator. And from the beginning, we said that John should have full administrative access to the VPN access concentrators. So John supplies his credentials. MikroTik asks the network access server, are John's credentials good? Are they valid? And this is the authentication. And the NAS says that, yes, they are valid. You know, I can accept this. But in this case, the radius server knows that, but John is trying to log in into a VPN access concentrator. I should tell the MikroTik as an attribute inside of the access accept to give John full administrative privileges. Okay, great. John tries to log into a PPPoE access concentrator. I think we said he should have just limited read-only access. Okay, so again, the same thing happens. John supplies credentials, MikroTik asks Radius, and now Radius realizes, this is John, and he is logging into a PPPoE access concentrator. He should have read-only access. So in the access accept packet, MikroTik specifically says in one of its attributes, let John in, but only give him read-only access. So you can simply create groups of devices. You know, a group of IP addresses, groups of devices. These are VPN access concentrators, these are BGP peers, these are customer routers. And then depending on the origination of the access request, you can do different reply attributes in the access accept, which will become our authorization policy. Any questions? Okay, no questions. So I guess everybody understands. Very good. So yes, it's a little complication because it actually happens here, but that little complication is actually our authorization policy. So again, like our friend here asked, can I just give an admin that has an SSO account access to only one router? Sure, on your Radius server, you simply define a rule that says this admin can only log into one or to this particular MikroTik. And so the Radius server would know that, okay, only for this one, I should reply with full admin credentials. For others, he should not get in. All right. So yes, Radius attributes are what allows all of this. And as we said, there is many different things can be done with Radius attributes. So for the purposes of this presentation, we are only talking about user management, about administrative access into our MikroTiks. But Radius can be used for example, PPP, so PPPoE, L2TP, SSTP, VPNs, whatever. It can also be used for AAA of those. Again, imagine you have 10 VPN access concentrators across your network. It doesn't make sense to actually have a single user in all of the 10 local databases have to update it 10 times. You know, it's the same principle, right? And you need 10 access concentrators because you have so many users, you want to have redundancy, they are geo-redundant and stuff like that. In bigger networks, that's common. So again, it's the same principle. All of those VPN access concentrators would do their AAA against a single common point. So this is just an example of how Radius can be used for something different than this presentation. And again, Radius attributes would say, for example, for PPP, the IP address to assign to the client, or the queue to assign to the client. And this goes back to the concept which I explained in the beginning. Separate network access from configuration. You wouldn't manually configure, for example, queues. QoS. I hope everybody knows what queues are in MikroTik. So you wouldn't specify speed limits in configuration. You would specify them in access management inside of your Radius. So again, I'm going on a little tangent, but you know, what we are explaining here can be used for multiple purposes. So example for us in keeping in spirit with this presentation. So a Radius attribute can actually be what MikroTik user group to assign to a client. So yes, how do access policies even work in RouterOS? Access policies in RouterOS are based on user group membership, and a group membership grants a user various privileges. This is how the configuration window actually looks like in RouterOS. Right, so I can define a group, and users which belong to this group will have all of these nice things available on the router. So I can create multiple groups on my router. For example, read-only group, which is actually created by default. Full group, which is also created by default. But I can also do some custom things depending on my use case, depending on what I need. So I would create different groups which would specify my access policy. And then when a particular user logs in, I would simply tell the Radius to reply with that particular group to the MikroTik depending on which user is logging in and into which device. As we said, a flexible, network-wide, coherent access policy. And yes, so that's how it's done. You simply specify a group. In Radius is access, accept, reply as an attribute. And this will allow us to centrally manage users' authorization. Users, what privilege of access do they have? So, getting close to the end here. So what should we do? We should point all our MikroTiks to AAA against a central set of Radius servers to achieve all the good things which we have described here. And we should create a unique account for each of our admins in our Radius database. And this is finally getting to the thing which was asked earlier. We will have a fallback per router unique last resort local management account that should never be used unless communication to the Radius or Radii servers is down. And we will keep this in a password manager. So how MikroTik basically works is when a user tries to log in to a MikroTik, there is a fallback mechanism. So if your Radius username password doesn't work, so if Radius replies with access denied, MikroTik tries against the local database. This way we can have a fallback to a local account. But again, this local account should be unique per router, should be really crazy complex passwords, and should never be used only as a last resort to access the router. So how do I configure all of this on our MikroTiks? So first of all, we create a new restricted group. So this is a group that has absolutely no access. Why will be on the next slide. Then we tell MikroTik for AAA of all of our users into our MikroTik, set the default group to restricted and use radius yes. And the last magic step is simply to add our radius servers against which our MikroTik should do its AAA. Fairly easy, right? It's just 4 lines of configuration. Well, a bit more if we count in the command section changes. So why do we create the restricted group? We create the restricted group, enable AA. I think we set all of this already. So yes, why do we create the restricted group? This is basically a security measure. As we said, a group is what actually defines users' privilege on a router. So what we say here is create a group that has no access at all, and unless radius tells us otherwise, assume the default group is restricted. So unless radius tells us specifically what access the user should have, give him no access. And this is a security measure simply to not let the user in if we haven't specified an explicit authorization policy, a specific explicit privileges that he has on this router. This is just to protect from misconfigurations. It's basically default authorization policy none, right? So for example, if I just add in a user, but somehow my radius is incorrectly configured or something happens, that user should not have access to a MikroTik because he is not in a proper radius group, then, but somehow he actually manages to authenticate against the MikroTik, right? We give him no access. So he needs to authenticate properly and he needs to have authorization. Again, it's a security thing, right? It's better to check security twice than just once. So I hope I'm not over-explaining a fairly simple thing or not over-complicating a fairly simple thing. So yes, that's that. So we configure all of that, and then we just tell our router to use our radii servers for AAA, and we use 2 for redundancy. So that's all that's happening inside of here. Any questions? No questions, okay. Okay, so how to configure a radius server? And so basically you have 2 options for a radius server. You have free open source for Linux, FreeRadius. And this is the standard that basically the entire industry uses. FreeRadius was actually written by the guys that standardized Radius itself, that created the RFCs and standardized it. So basically it's the de facto standard inside our industry. But actually Microsoft also has Microsoft NPS Radius, which is for Active Directory integration. So actually, if you are running Active Directory and you are a Windows guy, you can still use Radius. It's possible to set up fully functional Radius against your Active Directory, so you can use your Active Directory accounts for logins into your MikroTiks. It's fairly handy. It works. I've actually deployed Microsoft NPS multiple times. I prefer FreeRadius on Linux, but either are viable functional options. Just a few notes on FreeRadius. There are actually 2 major versions of FreeRadius. Both are currently maintained and upgraded and are supported for deployment, FreeRadius 2 and FreeRadius 3. So when deploying Radius, just be careful which version of Radius you deploy, because they configure a little bit differently. And so yes, there actually used to be a guide on how to set up FreeRadius here, but it was 20 slides and 15 minutes to explain. And it's actually a little bit out of scope of this presentation, since we've actually already used up all of our presentation time. So like earlier today, again, I am sorry to the next presenter. I have already used all of my time. So yes, it was cut out of here for time constraints. Sorry if you were hoping for that. So Microsoft NPS guide. So there used to be a guide here how to set up Microsoft NPS radius, but it was another 15 slides. It included Active Directory, domain controller related configuration, and took another 10 minutes to explain. So it was cut out of here for time constraints. Okay, yeah, nice of you. You've told me what I should do, but you didn't tell me how to do it. Useless presenter. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. But luckily, there is quite a lot of material and presentations on the internet on how to set up both. Just if you are trying to set up FreeRadius, be careful if you are looking at guides for FreeRadius 2 or FreeRadius 3, because as we said, they configure a bit differently. And if you are looking for guides on how to set up Microsoft NPS radius, just be careful for which Windows Server version you look up the guides for, because it's configured differently on 2012 R2, and it's configured differently on 2008, and it's configured entirely differently on 2003, and I really hope nobody uses Windows Server 2003 anymore. Anyway, yes, if you need help with this, let me know. I can give you all of the configuration. I didn't include it here in the presentation because, for example, for FreeRadius, it's a lot of configuration files because it's a Linux standard thing, right? A lot of configuration files. And for Windows NPS, it's a lot of screenshots how to set it up. So if you want it, just let me know. There will be my contact information at the end of the presentation. I will gladly send you all of the configuration steps. And if you need help to set it up, just let me know. I'll help you out. So yes, sorry for teasing you with all of this nice information and then giving you no configuration. As I said, just let me know or look at the internet. There really is a lot of good quality material for all of this. It's a well-covered topic that's used very often in the industry. It's a standard thing that people do commonly in their networks. So you should be able to figure this out and study this for yourself. So that's it for this presentation. Some additional resources. I already covered this today, so I will just fast forward. If you are interested in more of my presentations, you can find me on YouTube. Just Google Toma or my name or put my name into YouTube, and there's my presentations and talks and other things there. I am a member of the Brothers Wisp, and we are a networking podcast. We do bi-weekly networking podcasts on various interesting topics. If you like to, check us out. And thank you very much for your attention. And